Hi, my name is Spencer Hunley, and I'm autistic. For about 2 years, I was working a full time IT job for a government contractor in an office that relied upon a lot of interpersonal communication. While we had desks, we didn't have high dividers and weren't really isolated from each other. I don't want to go into too much detail regarding why I left that job, but when I did, we were on the edge of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was really just getting started. Our employer reacted slower than others, which did add to my anxiety and affected my work. However, they finally came up with a plan that would minimize exposure while still fulfilling the contract. One week would be in the office, and the next week we'd work from home. I had worked from home once before when I recovered from a physical injury, and honestly, I really liked it. Specifically, I enjoyed the control over my own environment. Few to no unnecessary distractions such as lights or noise or motion or even smells. I was able to modify my desk without worrying about a coworker's space. No harsh fluorescent lighting. Better quality chair to sit in made it easier to actually sit for longer periods of time. More privacy when using the toilet. Lunches weren't a rush, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that made it really nice to work from home. And happily, no commute, so I wasn't spending time just sitting in traffic. That was actually really nice. In addition, I was relieved to not have to attend meetings in person. I could speak up online over a conference call and even text chat via Skype, which made it easier to convey my thoughts, my ideas, and responses in a more articulate manner. I could focus more on the meeting itself without having to monitor my body language, maintain eye contact, or get distracted by what someone else was doing in the meeting, whether it be fidgeting with a pen, or shuffling papers, or looking around, or even getting on their phone. I was also more productive as a result of not wasting time being physically in meetings that didn't pertain to my work. And when the meetings did pertain to my work, or when the meetings did happen, I could apply what was discussed in the meeting directly to what I was doing much faster. I would go from the meeting directly back to work, and that made it easier to recall and retain the information. Communicating with coworkers over text chat was really nice. We did this in the office anyway, but it was always kind of a hybrid of sorts. Verbal conversation with text chat. But having everything on text made it way better to search in case I forgot something. It made complex words and phrases easier to understand and process. And overall, it felt more efficient. I was able to retain things, like I said, and remember things, and that made me feel a lot more confident in what I was doing. So adapting to the week in, week out procedure was very much favorable for me, and my productivity improved. I also genuinely felt better overall and didn't dread going to work as much. My anxiety went down noticeably, especially when it came to some symptoms such as I was getting better quality sleep, my neck didn't hurt as much, I have a neck injury which seems to be exacerbated by anxiety and stress. So both of those things improved, and I would like to give that full credit to being able to work from home and not deal with all the stressors of being in a workplace like that. If I was still working there, I would be trying really hard to have management permanently adopt this new procedure. So being able to put these things into practice and do these things from home, I would be heavily lobbying for, because they did so much for me as a worker. Currently, I'm no longer working in that position. I am working, but not in IT right now. Uh, Long story short, it had been a toxic environment for a while, and I decided it was best if I resigned and pursued different options. So now I am working in a part-time security job, as well as being paid a stipend by a local university as part of their LEND program. LEND stands for Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities. It's a rare opportunity that I decided was just too important to pass up. It's where I would really like to be. I like technology, I like IT, but my focus has always been on making technology much more accessible, making sure that disabled people are able to use the devices that we all share, and using the technology to not only improve various processes, but also make communication and things that we take for granted more accessible. It has always kind of been a passion, but it's also been kind of something that I found to be very. I've been stymied by the fact that we've made so much progress in technology, and yet we're still so far behind for disabled individuals as far as them being able to access the tools that most people use on a daily basis that they take for granted. The security job, on the other hand, it's very good in a few ways, but it could be better in others. Allow me to explain. From the start, I am pretty much 100% self-managed. While I have a manager, I rarely, if ever, see them. I clock in and out by calling and using my employee identification number, and I work typically 9 to 5 with an optional break for lunch. I oversee and monitor a parking lot for shipping vans, and I use the company car to make my rounds. Sometimes, though, I will walk my rounds around the parking lot just to get some exercise in the mornings. Sitting in a car all day can make you feel kind of stiff, so it's nice to be able to get up and move around from time to time. I will wave, say hi to some of the employees, but otherwise we don't talk too much, partly because they're busy and partly because of the coronavirus. It's really easy to maintain social distancing in this setting. I'm not armed, by the way, just to let you know. And aside from filling any reports out, if there's an emergency, we just call 911. So because I'm self-managed, I can choose when I go for lunch, and I can even eat while I'm on shift. As long as I keep my eyes open and observing and follow up on my duties, there's not a problem with that. Unfortunately, there's only a porta potty on site, so I try to avoid using the toilet there if possible. It does get hot, especially right now. We're coming up on the peak of summer, but using the company car, it's got air conditioning, and I'm able to adapt to that. So it's been working out pretty well. My only interaction with my coworkers is at the beginning and at the end of my shift, letting them know if anything's happened, kind of giving them a status report, and confirming that they've clocked in or out. We don't get to chat too much, but that's not really a problem. We're allowed to use our phones, but a lot of the time I just kind of turn on the radio for background noise, and I do that while I'm watching all the employees work, when they drive by, and even the train passing along the railroad crossing nearby. It can be kind of dull, but I have way lower stress levels and anxiety levels, and my confidence is just, I think it's where it needs to be. I'm very confident in what I do. I feel good about what I do, and when I go to work, I don't dread being there at all. I don't, traffic is always an issue, but I'm pretty close, so the commute's not been too much of an issue. And so overall, I feel much happier. In comparison, my rate of pay is lower, but really, I feel much happier with this, and I don't regret leaving the previous position. Now, this job could be better in that I'd like more guidelines for what I do each day, outlining what I'm supposed to look for, maybe keep an eye on what things in the parking lot or what goes on, or kind of an idea of what the employees do during the day and where they're supposed to be, that sort of thing. Maybe even have more interaction with my manager, as well as the manager of the shipping vans themselves. Having that communication would be kind of important to me, but it's not necessary. Well, maybe that in indoor restrooms too, but you're not going to get everything you want in some jobs. We do wear masks just in case, and after each shift, we wipe down the interior of the company car to be safe as well. Regarding the LEND program, it's not fully begun yet. However, I'm still working on a couple of projects as a way to get an early start. So unfortunately, this has been the most problematic area. It's not due to Lens though. Len's been responsive. They've kept in touch, but and I don't know if this is really due to coronavirus or if it's just kind of an Achilles heel when it comes to technology. The projects I've been working on have had sporadic and inconsistent communication, sometimes no communication at all. I send an email with questions regarding new meeting dates or tasks, and I almost get no response. This alone happens repeatedly, and to the point where I've been researching email etiquette to figure out if it's something that I'm doing on my end. Am I not phrasing it correctly? Is the subject line seen as spammy? Is there another issue that I'm not aware of that I'm just missing out on? So I'm trying to adapt how I write, how I communicate to try and encourage response. Uh, it's not a problem that I've discovered specifically during the quarantine, but it's definitely been exacerbated by it. At my previous job, nearly every message you would send would get a reply, be it chat, be it email, or whatever. You would get a reply. It was very rare to not get a reply. Now, though, with what I'm doing, it's entirely unpredictable if you'll get a response, not even considering when you'll get it, unfortunately. Coordinating files and shared documents has been a chore. It's very hard to make sure people stick to what we're using as far as collaborative software management tools. We have these things. It's available. It works. It's universal. So no matter what you're using, if you're using Windows or Mac, or in my case, Linux, those tools still work universally. So it's not a problem of compatibility or hardware being up to the task. It's entirely based on the person accepting these things and working within them and sticking to the tools. And that's been difficult. There's just a major lack of motivation and interest as far as I can tell, and that's disheartening. I mean, is it due to higher stress levels, due to current events? I guess I just thought people would be using their computers and devices more, and that somehow because they're using it more, they'd be more responsive. Maybe because they just are already on it, they'd use it more. But I guess that's incorrect. I don't know how to motivate volunteers nor encourage them to respond to messages and use the tools that we agreed upon. And I fear alienating them. But without consistent online meetings and even in person meetings, all I'm able to do is just guess. It's kind of like my first year of college socializing all over again, where I'm trying to figure things out and I'm making a lot of mistakes and errors half the time without even knowing that I've made a mistake. And as much as I liked college, I'd rather not go through that again. That's not a period of time that I would like to repeat. But aside from that, working from home has been great. I can make lists and I plan my days ahead of time. I set timers for myself for breaks and lunches, and I set a clear boundary between work time and home time outside of the part-time security job. This helps me concentrate and not have work and home kind of meld together, which is important. So, kind of wrapping things up, I truly do wish that these adaptations, such as video conferencing, text chat, online meetings, and more, would become permanent, and not just in where I'm working, but across the board for our nation. While I know that occasional in person meetings are inevitable at some point, working from home has been very beneficial to me, especially as an autistic. It drastically reduces the social aspect of work, and despite what the layperson may believe, socializing in person at work before COVID was definitely mandatory and definitely enforced, despite not being really written down. But anyway, it drastically reduces that social aspect of work while allowing me more control over my environment and subsequently the amount of sensory stimulation that I take in. I think employers would find autistics not only as more attractive candidates, but also more productive workers with these adaptations. It's a shame that the pandemic was what forced them to entertain different ways of working, but perhaps nothing short of that would have been as persuasive.